It is great to be with you all today. I could not believe it. As soon as the thought went through my head, I realized it was an absurd excuse. It was a Friday afternoon, the van was loaded, and I was headed back to church. And what I said to myself was, my 42-year-old self, what I said to myself was, you are too old to be spending the night with the confirmation class for yet another lock-in. As soon as I said it, I thought, what am I doing? My age has nothing to do with this. My body is no different, really, than it was last year when I was 41. But somehow, I had received the message along the way that we can blame our age on things that we're feeling or things that we don't want to do. The reality is that most messages about what is expected related to a person's age are irrelevant. Okay, there are a few exceptions. 16 is the legal age to drive. 18 is the legal age to vote. 21, you can drink. 26 is when you have to go off your parents' health insurance. But 60, what's 60 supposed to look like? I say this is what 60 looks like for me. But when the woman last Sunday said to me that I was aging really well, I just didn't have the energy to inquire what she thought 60 was supposed to look like. There are many troubling messages about aging that come from every corner of our world. So many that we don't even think about it. We allow these messages to seep into our interior thoughts, mold how we look, how we act, what we expect, based on an arbitrary number. And age is just that, merely a number. A number that the culture around us has assigned significant factors of worthiness and beauty and visibility and trust. A number that influences when we can work and when we are no longer valued, or what kinds of medical therapies may be offered, or when to deny things that are central to our self-understanding by others. Those messages about age, when we let them mold us, can affect how we age and how long we actually live. Let's consider a more theological understanding of aging, or what God's will might be for our aging process. We are created in the image of God. We have been gifted these bodies as imperfect and beautiful as they are. In God's infinite wisdom, we, like every other form of life in creation, have a beginning and an ending, a birth and a death, and we were created to continue to grow and change as long as there is breath coming in and out of our lungs. In infancy and childhood, we usually think of this growing as something miraculous and amazing. Sure, we have challenges along the way, but growing is so important that we measure progress with photos and albums, or on Facebook today. We put marks on the wall. We have documents of achievements of all kinds of things as we grew up. But somewhere after about 2 decades, we stop seeing growth. We stop seeing aging as being positive. When asked, many choose to repeat a specific decade or year that they've already lived in the past, because we've received messages that youth was the pinnacle, that the best of life is behind us, and that aging is something to deny, avoid, hide, cure, or erase. A participant in a recent workshop I led walked in the room and declared, "I'm 29. I was surprised when a little later she admitted she was actually 35. She had believed the message that younger is better, and that she had to even hide that she was 35. We don't know exactly what the issues were for the Christians in Rome from the passage this morning, but we can surmise that they were wrestling with what messages to believe from the culture around them, particularly when those messages were at odds with the theological concepts taught by the church. Do not allow this world to mold you in its image. Instead, be transformed from the inside out by the renewing of your mind. Aging is a gift from God. That's what our faith tells us. Ageism is not.
Right.
Ageism is how we think, feel, and act toward others, towards ourselves, based on how old we think they are. Those are the negative messages that the world tells us about aging. Any assumption that our age tells the stories of what we can or can't do relies on stereotypes, and that is ageist. Any assumption that one number is equal to the quality of our life is prejudiced, and that is ageist. Any notion that assumes that we are completely responsible for our own aging process is false. Placing blame on someone who may be suffering from age-related disease processes, that's ageist. There are so many discriminatory laws, regulations, and practices in our cultures that shape our aging experience, we aren't even aware how they affect them, and we can't talk about all of them today. But we can talk about the fact and remember that we have been gifted with these bodies, not by the world or in the image of anything in the world, but we are created in the image of God. And our experience in these bodies, for as long as we have these bodies, is to be an offering to our Creator. Our bodies, no matter how many years we have inhabited them, serve as the vessels which allow us to worship God. There is no point when God says, nope, your best buy date has expired, and you are now relegated to spend the rest of your years stored away in the back of the refrigerator like a carton of milk, curdling away until someone finally throws you out. That, my friends, is what ageism can feel like. How can we celebrate our aging selves? Today's passage suggests that we need to discern God's will and that there is no limit on that age limit on that discernment process. I would add that this transformation, this inward introspection, this reflection can be particularly rewarding spiritual practice the more years we live. I want to briefly lift up some of the messages, the narratives about aging that exist in the world around us. Researchers from the Frameworks Institute have studied the attitudes about aging in the general public, and they've highlighted some key storylines. One narrative is that to be old is to be vulnerable, frail, less than, decrepit, and declining downhill slope towards death. The opposite narrative is that we are to be super-agers, parachuting out of airplanes on our 80th birthday, or engaged in other activities that we assume only younger people do. There's a sub-narrative here that we can age successfully. But such an assertion suggests then that some fail at aging. And failure then is attributed to blaming or shaming people whose experience in their physical bodies is painful or which brings an end to their life even before the average life expectancy. The diseases which can develop in later life are not a requirement for everyone who ages. Then there's the tension in the storyline that pits generations against each other based on a zero-sum world where one age wins. In the passage today, we are all parts of the body. We are all parts of the body. And when we discriminate against older adults, we are discriminating against our own future selves. Another storyline in our culture is rooted in nostalgia, falsely claiming that it was so much better and so simpler in previous times to age. Let's pause here and see how we might challenge that one in a little bit more detail. Average life expectancy is one way to compare the quality of the aging experience between cultures and across decades. Anthropologists suggest that in the centuries encompassed in the writing of our biblical texts, the average life expectancy was somewhere between 18 in those earliest years and 30 by Jesus' lifetime. Just an aside, how many of us have ascribed in some form or fashion to the notion that Jesus' ministry at the age of 30 began in his early adulthood, that he was just getting started, that his life was taken so young at 33? Does it make a difference in how we see his ministry and how we inspire others when we realize that he had reached the average length of life and perhaps this was his encore career? When we hear the few examples of biblical characters who are old, we need to think in terms of relative terms. The few who lived into their advanced years, well beyond the time when they could bear children, were seen as being blessed. Aging was seen as a good thing, a gift from God. So fast forward from Jesus' era to 1800. The average life expectancy was not that much different. We'd added 1 to 2 years to the average life expectancy by 1800. Over that next century, the number increased by 15 years. 15 years, so that in 1900, the average life expectancy was between 47 and 49. Over this next century, this past century, we have added more years to the human lifespan than have ever been added since the beginning of time. We're the recipients of 30 years, thanks to a multitude of gifts from our grandparents and our great-grandparents. For in their lifetimes, they helped to decrease infant mortality. They put into place child labor laws. They advanced maternal health care. There's social supports for those living in poverty. They increased availability of education and medical care. Medical advances which allow us to live well today previously were terminal conditions in previous generations. They put into place safe housing, a more adequate food supply, transportation, the list goes on. Although we each make individual choices that do affect our aging process, yes, I should be exercising more, Valerie, the larger influence has to do with these systemic policies and laws and cultural attitudes. Consider the fact that there is a 20-year difference in the average life expectancy just within Franklin County. And that we can see that difference when we take a look at the zip codes. This doesn't mean that the people in this zip code are making really good personal choices, and the people in this zip code are making really poor choices. It's related to the realities that they have had access to or not had access to throughout their entire life. Redlining, access to educational opportunities, adequate transportation to workplaces that will support their families. The researchers at Frameworks, after identifying those public narratives and comparing these with the view of aging with aging professionals, then experimented with how to change those public narratives. Their research shows that we see aging differently when we consider it from a perspective of justice. We need to identify ageism and disrupt its rampant effects as aging is a human right. Ageism is not an ism that is any more or less important than any other ism. It exasperates all of the others. It is the one ism that we could all possibly experience later in life, and I'll bet most of us have experienced it already in earlier life. It is the only ism that our culture continues to view as culturally acceptable. We laugh at ageist jokes, Saturday Night Live. We send ageist birthday cards. You're over the hill, now written on black balloons. How is that a celebration of life? We buy products to reduce wrinkle lines, cover gray hair, hide age spots, just so we aren't seen as being old. We talk about those old people, except for Valerie, who said, I am. She included herself in that statement. Woo! We have to recognize that we are all aging. And when we say those old people, we are othering and we are separating ourselves. And when we balk at using a device or an item that others would assume are used by old people, that's ageism at work within us. Confession, it took me 6 weeks to convince myself that the audiologist knew what she was talking about and that I could improve the quality of my own life by hearing aids. This is the work I do, and yet I had to work within myself to uncover those ageist messages that I was not old enough at the age of 59 to be getting hearing aids. So why am I preaching about aging here at seminary today? When United Church Homes was working on restating its mission, vision, and values in 2014, the board could not turn away from the passage in John 10 that says, "When I have come so that all may have life and have it abundantly." our vision statement continues to be today that United Church Homes is where the Spirit creates abundant life and community. A few years later, with the launching of the Ruth Frost Parker Center, it was decided that it was to be the Center for Abundant Aging, with the nod to our theological understanding of abundant life in Christ. Now, abundant aging has three implications: longer lives, more people, and deeper spirits gaining in wisdom. We already talked about life expectancy. We have the potential of having more time. This extension of the lifespan has increased the number of people who are aging in the world. Okay, you ready? There are more people today alive on earth over the age of 50 than have ever lived over the age of 50 since the beginning of humankind. Let me put it another way. If we add up all the people who have lived over the age of 50 since the beginning of time, and we compared that to the number of people who are over the age of 50 alive on earth today, there are more today. There are more. There are more people experiencing longer lives. And yet we continue to perpetuate the negativity about this gift. The church has been silent about these messages. We do this in journalism. Look at the cover of the New Yorker that came out yesterday. Makes me want to pull out my hair. I won't even go into it right now. We do this in media, in movies, TVs, video games, commercials. We tell these messages to our story, to ourselves. I'm not old enough to wear hearing aids. And we project our aging prejudice and stereotypes on others, and we carry them into the church. Yes. I have seen and heard church leaders wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth that the congregations all have gray hair and wrinkly skin. And those are exact words that they have used. The assumption is, from the culture around us, that because everyone who is old is preparing and waiting for death, and because there's so many of those old people in the church, then the church is dying and has no more mission ahead of it. I believe that anyone who is engaged in ministry is engaged in ministry with older adults. And we have to claim that, we have to own that, and we have to understand how our own stereotypes and prejudice about aging affect that ministry that we are engaged in. This is the third aspect of abundant aging. It has more to do with the depth of experience that we experience in later life. Do we expect and offer the elder members of our congregations, invite them to grow, to continue to learn, to connect with younger generations, to envision their role as both a connector with what has gone before and a supporter of what will come even after they have gone? Leaders within our faith communities, I have a few suggestions. First of all, remember that when you've seen one older person, you've seen one older person. We are more diverse as we age. Right. Don't make assumptions about everyone because of one. Right. That older male member who is grumpy has probably been grumpy most of his life. Or if he hasn't, it may be a symptom of some other spiritual issue that he needs to be working on. Right. Don't assume that all older men are going to be grumpy because of your experience with him. We have to stop lumping everyone over 65 into one cohort. We have middle school and high school groups in churches, right? That is a whopping 7-year age span. Woo! There's a 30 to 40-year age difference and experience difference for older adults. Why do we lump everyone over the age of 65 into one category, ministry with older adults? Because in that 30 to 40 years, you probably have both parent and adult children, right, which is literally 2 generations. We need to think more about life circumstances, and we need to help people connect across generations. Right. In these gifts of 3+ decades, we need to expect new things. Contrary to the messages from the world around us, later life is not an extended period to prepare for death or to look back on one's life with regrets. The most productive and creative decade of life is 60 to 70. Not 30 to 40, not 40 to 50, 60 to 70. Don't assume that older adults can't or don't want to learn. Don't assume that they want to keep everything the same as they've always done. Familiarity can bring comfort, but it can also foster stagnation. Mastery of a skill that we've been doing over a long period of time or a talent is a very valuable thing, but so is too is having a beginner's mind and learning new things. Everyone needs to have meaning and purpose in their life, and what gives meaning and purpose will change over the life course. We need to encourage opportunities for reflection on previous experience in order to learn what we need to know for the future. Old men and women dream dreams about the future. They know that the amount of time they will experience in the future is shorter than the amount of time that they've experienced in the past, but they also know that the future extends beyond their own lifetime and they can contribute to that future as long as they are alive. How do we empower them to do that and to understand that? This aligns with the instructions from today's passage. Be transformed from the inside out by the renewing of your mind. As a result, you will be able to discern what God wills and whatever God finds good, pleasing, and complete. We need to transform what we think about aging from the inside out, from how we think about our own aging process to what we think about others based on our perception of how many years they've lived. Becca Levy is the Yale researcher, one of the lead researchers in the field of aging and looking at the effects of ageism. Here's what she's found. Those who battle aging, those who do not battle aging, who see aging as positive, as a gift, we would say theologically, have better balance, better memory, and they tend to live, they can live as much as 7.5 years longer than those who believe all the messages from our culture and they battle aging. There is no medication that can have those same results. We can have those results just by the way we think. Perhaps when we stop fighting the aging process, we will have a clearer understanding of God's will in whatever year we are living. We can have abundant aging throughout our life. And that is, after all, what God wills, that we experience the gift of life from the inside, these changing bodies which are older each morning we wake up. And even when we struggle with the physical changes, we can remind ourselves that in God's eyes, this aging stuff is good. Aging is pleasing to our Creator, and when we seek to contribute to the community around us, participating in God's will. May we all, when we come to the end of our breathing, may we rest well knowing that we have participated in God's process. May you embrace your age and celebrate the years yet to come. Even as you encourage and celebrate the graying, wrinkling, aging members of your congregations and those older neighbors who do not yet participate in your church, may you know that there is a ripe mission field out there with people who are wrestling for the first time in their lives what is the significance of these later years. There are older people who are around your congregations who are seeking community, and they are not connected to any denomination. And they want to know, they want to make sure that they are heard. They want to be able to ask questions, and they want to be able to contribute to community. Hello, church. Are we willing to welcome all? Blessings. Amen.